Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of 219 Green Connect, where we explore topics about the environment and green living in Northwest Indiana. For past show archives, news, and upcoming events, you can check out our website at 219greenconnect.com. There's a little Blog Talk Radio widget on the left-hand side on the website. You can click there, or you can connect with us and follow other news and updates on Facebook or Twitter. We are also now available as a subscription via podcast on iTunes, so you can listen that way as well. Listeners to our show today, live at 10 o'clock, March 28th, can phone in at 805-243-1323 to join the conversation or post a question in chat. And I am your host, Kathy Sipple. I am lucky enough today to have as my guest John Ervin. He is returning once again to share his knowledge. John is an ecologist and an entrepreneur at Primal Elegance, and we're going to be talking today about invasive species and what you can do about them. So welcome, John. Let's get him on the line.
Hi, Kathy.
Hey,
How
welcome.
are you hearing me today?
Very good. Thanks for coming back again. You're just a font of information, and we're very grateful to have you share it with us once again.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I don't know how many of your listeners would not have read your description, but I'd like to talk to people today about invasive species on their properties and what they can do about them.
That would be great. Yeah, I think we should share all of it just because people may be coming in at, different source points. So you had mentioned that there are over 70 different invasive species. Is that correct?
At my last count, yes, and they are increasing. And that's 70 invasive species for this region alone.
Okay.
They're coming in from all sides, and that's just the plants. The news has been filled in recent years with things like the emerald ash borer and the Asian longhorn beetle, and everybody knows the ladybugs. So invasive species are not just confined to plants. There's fish. There's actually we have parakeets in the region that can be considered as invasive species on certain levels.
Wow.
They're colonizing over in Highland. They have been colonizing the cell phone towers and forming their nests up in those cell phone towers.
Wow.
Creating problems.
Interesting.
So that's one of the points I want to talk about, Kathy, is what do we value and the criteria of an invasive species, and what does that mean?
Okay.
And it reports directly to our own human selfishness, and that's not a bad thing. I say it as a way for us to discuss these things in terms of the values that we value.
Mm-hmm.
And today is a great example. We are under a fire weather warning today. Not everywhere got the rain last night, and so there are weather alerts. And all along our highways and up along a lot of our buildings and such are invasive species like the giant reedgrass, Phragmites. You're familiar with that one that we see all along our highways?
Yeah, that's kind of got like the puffy ostrich plume-looking thing at the top. Is that right?
Exactly. It is not native to this continent.
Okay.
Pardon me. And it is here without natural predators. So it grows unrestricted. And it colonizes and competes and does some other things to the habitat that make it exceptionally good at what it does. Unfortunately, what it also does is it promotes fire. It's a fire hazard, and these roadside fires that we see from people flipping cigarettes and a lot of the wildland fires that we see in Lake County are running through this invasive species. And so it's not just about aesthetics. It's not just about the ecology itself, and it's not about just functionality. We're talking about safety here as well, and that applies to other invasives too. And so, just as another thing about safety, giant hogweed is a new one to the region, and it has the ability to it's phytotoxic is what they call it. Phyto, light, toxic. It becomes toxic when exposed to sunlight, and it'll burn you. It will actually make chemical burns on your skin and you're in contact with it. As an interesting side note, a cute little anecdote, the band Genesis years ago wrote a song about giant hogweed.
Really?
And yes, and the lyrics to it are very fun to read. So if you can look that up and put it on your site, that would be kind of cute.
Okay. You've got me interested. I'll do some Googling after this.
So, yeah. But the values, I want to get back to the values of it.
Okay.
And so when a customer calls me, I have, right now I'm dealing with a client that has teasel in his prairie. He values his prairie restoration. He took it out of farm production. He was advised to plant it as prairie to recover the soil, recover the habitat, and such. And now he's got a problem with this teasel. He's got cutleaf teasel and common teasel in his prairie, and it's taking over. So he's already invested a bunch of money into it, and now what does he do? The first thing people ask me is, what do I spray? And I'm sure you're familiar with that phrase. What do I spray to get rid of it? And the thing is with these invasive species is it's difficult for the landowner to learn the variety of techniques that I and my colleagues have accumulated over the years. And so what you do for one thing will not apply to the next species. And so what my consultations, my initial consultation, I come out and I help them define their problem. What's their value? What is the weed doing against their value? And is it even worth their time and their money to even mess with it? And a lot of times it's like garlic mustard. Garlic mustard in a floodplain, forget it. You'd be wasting your time to try to defeat it. But if you have it around your house, there's things you can do. And so that's the kind of consultation that I'm trying to provide. It's not all about running around being a nozzle head and squirting chemicals. There's physical and as well as chemical and behavioral things that a landowner can do to help prevent and control these things.
Okay. So it sounds like a little bit of I majored in economics, but I'm thinking cost-benefit analysis.
Absolutely.
Your values and what's the potential harm. If you've got something like hogweed that can actually burn you, that's certainly a consideration if you have small children or, if it's in a place where you're likely to have physical contact, that's a pretty big invasion into your values. But like you say, if it's not harmful, it's controlled, and aesthetically it's not getting you too worked up, that might be one to leave alone.
Right, and the aesthetics and the function, I've discussed my 6 points of importance when dealing with these problems: functionality, aesthetics, maintenance, wildlife and ecology, recreation, and being able to do education and interpretive outreach. But one of the things that really comes out is the recreation. You mentioned grandchildren coming over to Grandma and Grandpa's house and going out into the woods. This time of year, mushroom hunting. Who wants to go crashing through a sea of multiflora rose or Japanese barberry to get after a morel right now? And so it's interfering with your recreational values. And these things can be controlled, and you can recover your woods back to the way it was when it was handed down to you or when you bought it. And so that's what I try to do. I'm a problem solver. I try to help, and the economics of the situation are prominent. So
working within an individual's budget and objectives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very easy for me to simply do like some land managers. I don't want to, again, criticize a fraction of the business community here, but pond management. There's cattails around the ponds, the Phragmites. We have purple loosestrife around ponds, a variety of weeds. And here in the Valpo Lakes, where I live, Japanese knotweed is becoming a problem at the water's edge, and it's getting into people's yards. and it's really becoming insidious.
Mm-hmm.
So it's real easy to just hire somebody to come in and squirt chemicals on it, so-called wetland labeled or safe for your animals and your water and such. But everything comes down to technique and how much of this stuff you use, if you decide to use it at all. There may be mechanical techniques, physical techniques, and I do have a toolbox to help it explore those things.
Mm-hmm.
And the easier we go, the cheaper it is. The harder we go, the more intensive it is to comply to green ethics and such.
Right.
It gets a little bit more expensive.
Yeah, and I won't ask you to reveal all of your, secret proprietary tricks, but could you share maybe just one example of an idea that you are talking about when you say mechanical?
Okay. For example, cattails. If you get them at the right time of season, you can cut them off below the water surface, and they will literally drown. And no chemicals used. However, you have to get your belly button wet, and you have to kind of feel around underwater, sometimes blind, with a knife or a cutting implement. And sometimes there's a little bit of regrowth. It tries to come back. All these guys are tough guys. They come back very, very resiliently. And so when we do deal with these invasive species, we are talking about long-term management. There is no magic bullet per se. And there's other things like biological control, highly controversial. We're bringing critters from their homeland over here to eat them, but are we, in fact, creating another problem, a philosophical conundrum, what's best? And I do have purple loosestrife biological control at my disposal. There is some biological control for spotted knapweed that is showing some promise, but we're still tinkering with that. Garlic mustard hopefully is on the horizon for biological control. But these things, I do not try to coerce my clients on these things. I realize that it's almost like religion, that, when you mention biological control, it gets pretty hot and heated. And I don't necessarily promote these things, but if that's what the customer wants, I do have the capability of doing it.
Doing that, okay. Okay. Well, and what are the dangers if these things are not addressed? I mean, what happens if everybody just turns a blind eye and these invasive species go on invading?
Right. Well, it comes back to our values, and the individual values, of course, are what I deal with Primal Elegance. But there's also collective values that I dealt with as a public servant with the DNR, and those collective values are the nature preserves and natural areas that get infested by these things, like Oriental bittersweet up in the high dunes. I'm sure that everybody's seen the beautiful orange berries climbing up the trees all throughout the state park and all through the lake shore. Those are killing the trees. They get up to the top of the canopy and they're killing the oak trees and they're killing the white pines, our native white pines up there. And they're also covering a lot of the sand dunes. And then we have other things like the Tree of Heaven, for example. You see Tree of Heaven all along Highway 12. And it's not only an aesthetic issue, and it's not only a maintenance issue for maintaining power lines and such. It's also a problem for the soil and the health of our ecology. I keep going back to the soil, Kathy. These things have those allelopathic chemicals. And once the soil's poisoned, once you nuke the bacteria and fungi in the soil, it's very, very difficult to get that community back.
Right.
And it's a localized extinction. And our native plants require those mycorrhizae. We talked about those in our first show. And they require the symbiosis of the whole community there to release and cycle water, carbon, and nutrients. So the value for the community even goes to public health and safety. We are looking at I mentioned the Phragmites catching fire and such, but we are also looking at situations where these invasive species could, in fact, be promoting bad guys like ticks.
Okay.
There's several papers out right now that say that bush honeysuckle scrub promotes tick populations.
Wow.
I don't know this for certain, but I'm trying to read up on these things. And the bush honeysuckle itself is an invasive species, and the diseases that the ticks carry are bad. And that's just one example.
Right.
So there are comprehensive values that we're looking at as well.
Okay. Well, and I got to share this too, since we're back on soil. And I'm a big fan of the composting with worms, and I'm trying to do my part to build good soil. I went to a workshop a month or so ago, sponsored by Save the Dunes, and it was called Greening the Yard. And they were kind of showing us how to, avoid chemicals where possible, do natural lawn treatments, and, look at stormwater management. And, I mentioned worm composting because, I can't not mention that.
Right.
And somebody at the workshop, I think I remember who it was, but in case I'm wrong, I don't want to name names. She actually mentioned that the red wriggler worm that I use is an invasive species to this country. And I was like,
right.
You got to be kidding. But she said they are non-native. And, in some instances where they're kind of overpopulating, they're even causing trouble. So I thought, ay.
Right.
I'm trying to keep them in a bin.
Well, the thing is that you're defeating the purpose if you can't release them. And again, we're coming around to a situation where some species, like the garlic mustard in floodplains in certain situations, Pandora's box has already been opened. And so a lot of these species are landscape plants that are continuing to be sold. And do we go and outlaw them? Probably not. I mean, they're already out there, and so we have to control them in terms of our values. But for the earthworms, they supposedly the earthworms were all extirpated by the glaciers 11,000 years ago, all the way down to the farthest extent. So we have in southern United States, supposedly there's native strains. But one of the interesting things, Dr. Bernd Blasi at Cornell University has a prize posted for anyone that can show a population of garlic mustard that is not associated with earthworms. And so he's actually hypothesizing that there's a symbiosis of invasives taking place.
Interesting.
And that's just a simple one, but it's really neat. I mean, the more I learn about this stuff, the more I get trapped by the by the thought patterns and the conundrums, the circular logic of it.
Yeah, well, you have to be one part detective, one part researcher, one part ecologist, and one part entrepreneur, to keep the business part running. Yeah, I think you mentioned something to me before, and I thought probably bears repeating. What did you say? Ecology isn't rocket science?
Right. It's much more complicated. We have an undefined number of variables.
Yeah.
And the variables themselves are undefined.
Yeah.
So they're constantly changing on us.
Right.
So it makes it interesting.
Yeah, I have to say, the first time you said that to me, I kind of chuckled. I thought, well, yes, I'm sure it's very complicated, and you sure seem to know a lot. But yeah, the more we talk and the more I learn, I just think, how do you go about making those right decisions? As a landowner or as a, an organization like the DNR, looking at community values and that type of thing. It is very tough, but I think your 6 factors that you've identified is a good model to keep in mind. And just, can you enumerate them one more time, just to... Right.
Primal Elegance is shaped around managing values through functionality. So, for example, rain gardens have a functionality, bioswales have a functionality. And continuing with that, with those kinds of installations, aesthetics. It has to have curb appeal. We've said it before with people with some of these prairie plantings and such along the roads and their bioswales. It's like, my God, what were they thinking? It's got to be pretty. If it's not pretty, then all the functionality in the world is not going to justify installing it.
And they certainly can be. I mean, there's some very nice examples that I've seen, and I'm skipping ahead. I don't mean to rain on your parade, but your last thing about, education or what was the word that you used?
Interpretive outreach.
Interpretive outreach, right. I think that's what you're calling it when I look at a sign that's installed down here in Valpo. There's some work that's been done for pervious pavement and, natural management. You could see it and think it looked nice, but when they take the time and put a plaque out there to explain what's been done, I think, to me, it even looks prettier. So
right, because it doesn't just look like a weed patch. And even in the winter, these things have to have something there that, it shows that you care about your neighborhood appearance.
Right.
But very high and important. Now, the third thing on my list is the maintenance factor. I see a lot of installations and landscape designs that have a high maintenance, and everybody's too busy these days, Kathy, to babysit these ultra-green projects. And so one of the things that I really emphasize is zero maintenance if at all possible. And when I say zero, of course, there's no such thing as zero, but we try to make it so that the landowner his investment is something that will give more back to him eventually than he's putting in. And that maintenance is the biggest cost out there.
Sounds like sustainability, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. We got to be able to come out ahead. And wildlife and ecology, these things, we talk about the buffering and hedgerow kind of concept where we're providing habitat for our native species as well as our pollinators and other critters, our predators that would be helping us in our gardens and our landscapes. And the fifth thing on the list is recreation, whether it's passive or active recreation. If your value is related to that, we can look at that. We can look at that and enhance that for you and make it much more pleasurable. And then you mentioned the interpretation and education as the final point. And if we can't teach other people what we're doing, then why bother? So.
Yeah, well, it just seems like such a good opportunity, because some of these plantings can look a little different if you're in a, subdivision where everything is, just yews and boxwoods and things like that.
Right.
But, I think that they are very, very beautiful. In fact, I think I'm problematic in that I think a lot of these invasive species are actually beautiful until, again, you interpret them for me and tell me, Kathy, that's an invasive species.
Well, that's the thing. The term beautiful killer has been used with purple loosestrife for years.
Yeah.
The whole wetlands are purple. It's gorgeous. Who can deny that?
Right. Yeah, and it's tricky, but I think that's a great value you've offered me just on a very micro level. But I'm a big shutterbug up at the dunes. I like to take pictures on my cell phone camera when I'm up there, and I usually post them to Facebook or something. And John and a couple other friends who know a lot more about this stuff than I do will tell me, usually with the Latin name, what it is. And sometimes I've found some things that have been fairly rare, so that's fun too. But unfortunately, you've educated me that many things I've been posting that I think are beautiful, invasive as well.
Sorry to harsh you mellow.
No, that's okay. Hey, education is key. You need to kind of learn, I think, the full function of this object in our environment to understand, beauty fully. I mean, it isn't just that one pillar. You need to look at it holistically. So.
Right, that synergy has to come into play, and we all have to work and play together, and that includes all the critters that live in our urban ecology and ecosystem. So absolutely. Anybody can call me about these things. It's my email, and I just got my website going. It should be up and running before long, I hope. But my email is Primal Elegance with underscore between Primal and Elegance @live.com, and I hope to have a little bit more marketing amenities before long here. So.
And I hope to help you out with that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, just if I can totally poach on your half-hour segment for a minute. I mean, one of the things I do in my normal life is marketing, and certainly I would love to work with anybody that is involved in, green causes or green companies in Northwest Indiana or beyond for that matter, but I've got a particular, interest in helping this area. And, kind of to use your same model of synergy, one of the reasons I created 219 Green Connect is because I feel that by helping, you, John, and you helping me, we learn together who each of us may be able to help. And that's one of the reasons I do the show. I want to connect the dots so that we've got, people just, getting to use their highest and best skills. And, one of my skills is marketing. So, if I can help you get your message out, I'm happy to do it. If I can help other listeners get their message out, happy to do it. So you can also contact me, Kathy at 219 Green Connect, if you need some ideas on how we might work that out. But I will definitely post your link, John, once it's available and live. And you did mention critters. I don't know if we've got enough time. We've got just over 3 minutes left. That might be a little short. But I know you are also very active with the wildlife. Tell me the full name. The Porter County.
Okay, it's the Porter County Wildlife Management Advisory Board, and I was just appointed to that this spring. And we manage our first priority is Zona Wildlife Sanctuary, which was donated by the Zona family to the county several years ago, and it's located off of 550 East near, I think it's 950 North. And there are signs on Highway 6, so you can't miss it. Small signs, but that's our first priority. And we do have, we're participating in Arbor Day on April 7th. We're selling hostas. And then we're participating in Earth Day at the Expo Center. We're just promoting what we do. And wildlife, what is it? June 2nd and 3rd, my brain stopped, Kathy.
That's okay. You know what? I'm thinking that we'll probably do another show dedicated all to that, if that sounds like a good plan. But just since you had mentioned critters there at the end, I thought it might be worthy of note that that's another area, you're very involved in. I know it's something near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, well, this is a great opportunity for me to continue my public service. Once you get into that thing, it's very hard to get away from it.
Yeah.
I'm very much enjoying myself and my new colleagues.
Good. Well, and we just have about a minute and a half left. I wonder if I can take this time to just let people know of an interesting thing that's going on today and tomorrow. There's Hobart Marsh Plan Design Charrette going over at the City of Hobart Community Center and Festival Park. It's at 111 East Old Ridge Road. And they've got kind of some exciting things going on where they've gotten quite a large parcel of land and are inviting community members and other stakeholders to just kind of give input, look at the land use master plan, and basically work together to formulate what these next steps are going to be. So they're there all day today. 9:30 to noon is a studio work session. 12 to 1 they break for lunch. 1 to 6 another studio work session, and then 6 to 7 they'll report the learnings from today. Tomorrow, again, all day or nearly all day, 9 to 3, they will be kind of wrapping up the learnings from yesterday and today, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. It connects the bike trail over there in some important parts of Lake County, and I think it will really enhance people's recreational enjoyment of that natural space. So I want to thank John once again for joining us. That's Primal_Elegance, at live.com. That's how you can reach John, and we will post links to his website as soon as they're available. I'm Kathy Sipple, and this has been another episode of 219 Green Connect. Thanks for joining us.